And so when I first wanted to start getting ready for the qualifying exam, I went on YouTube to try to find videos about how to get ready for it, and I couldn't really find any. So I want to be able to make a video to help you guys pass your qualifying exam. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Adri Cortee. The goal of my channel is to make academia entertaining and accessible for you. So if that sounds good, please make sure to like and comment and subscribe. So today I'm going to be talking about how to pass your qualifying exam. So this process can be really daunting for people. I know it was a really scary process for me. I was just so nervous. I had heard, all sorts of things about it. And so when I first wanted to start getting ready for the qualifying exam, I went on YouTube to try to find videos about how to get ready for it, and I couldn't really find any. So I want to be able to make a video to help you guys pass your qualifying exam. So the first thing I want to get into is sort of the format of what my exam was. Then I'll give you some tips about how to prep for the actual qualifying exam. Then I'll give you some tips about what to do during the exam. And then I'll just end it with a few more tips about the exam process. What is a qualifying exam? Well, in my department, it's the exam you have to take before you can become a PhD candidate. When you come into the department, you are a PhD student, then you have to pass your qualifying exam after you finish all your credit hours, and then you're a PhD candidate and you can actually go on and get your PhD. My exam had two parts. It was a written proposal and an oral exam. The written proposal was in the format of an F31, which I'll put a link down below so you can see what that is. It's an NIH grant, and it was also an oral exam where I had 2 hours to basically present my thesis work to my committee. I had 10 PowerPoint slides and I was not allowed to use any animation. This is really the bulk of the test where you're actually, getting questioned by your committee. I also had a pre-qual with my committee about 6 weeks before the actual date of my real qual, where I went over the specific aims about my project and I got feedback from them. So that is also a little bit daunting, but you can't fail it, and it is helpful. So hopefully you have something like that too. And if you don't, maybe you can try to set that up. How do you prepare for your qualifying exam? Your committee is looking for you to have an extensive knowledge about generally just biology and about your project, and they want to see that you're thinking about science in a way that makes sense and that you can propose experiments that make sense and that are feasible. That's the kind of things that they're looking for. So how do you prepare for this? Well, the first thing you want to do is talk to your PI or your principal investigator, your boss, about preparing. So you need to let them know how much help will you need from them. Personally, my PI and I did a qual boot camp where we met 1 to 2 times a week, and he would assign me papers. I would read the papers and then go over them with him, and he would ask me questions, or he would assign me a certain topic, and then I would find several papers and reviews and sort of give him a comprehensive presentation about the topic he had assigned me, and he would ask me questions. And so he would drill me with the questions. And it was really helpful because by the time the qual date came, I was so used to answering questions that I was like, this is basically just another session with my PI. You also want to communicate with your PI your studying commitment and how that's going to affect your productivity in the lab. And so personally, I was spending about 80% of my time studying and 20% of my time doing actual lab work. And that's pretty dramatic. Just so you know, when I was really studying and really writing for this, I was spending about on average 6 hours a day combined writing and studying. So that's what my studying schedule looked like. It might seem intense, but that is really what I needed. Some PIs expect you to do 20% studying and 80% lab work. And I don't really think that's feasible for me personally, but it's good just to have the conversation. And if your expectations don't align, then you might need to get some help in so you guys can communicate and just make sure you're on the same page. If you want to be 90% studying, 10% lab work, your PI should definitely know that so they know what to expect from you in terms of productivity. The second thing to do is use your written proposal and the PowerPoint slides you make, if you get PowerPoint slides, as a study guide. So basically, after I wrote my proposal, I had all these papers that I had referenced, and I used these as kind of the papers that were my core papers that I knew really well. I would make sure I had read those all the way through, and I could use the references within those papers to study even more. But if you reference something in your proposal, your committee's probably going to think that you've read that paper, and so you need to read it. Those papers can kind of act as your core papers that you know really well, and you can begin to study those and sort of branch off from there. After I made my slideshow with my 10 slides, I used the slideshow also as a study guide. I went through every single slide and wrote down questions I thought my committee might ask me, and then I went through and answered those questions and practiced saying some of them out loud. So it was like I was basically creating a qual exam with myself based on my presentation, and it was really helpful, and some of the questions I did get asked actually in the real exam. The third thing you want to do is set up a mock qual if you can. In my department, this is a committee of grad students and postdocs that are within the labs of your committee members. They know how their PI asks questions, and they can probably guess pretty well what their PI is going to ask you during the actual qual. So you want to get this mock qual of students and postdocs, and then go through your whole presentation with them and have a mock qual where they can ask you questions and then give you feedback after about what you need to improve on, where your weaknesses are, and also what your strengths are, so you can sort of lean towards those. If your department doesn't do this, I would highly recommend doing this. I got several questions during the mock qual that were asked by my actual committee members during the qual, because when you're under somebody for a long time working for them, you really start to understand how they ask questions and what sorts of things they want to see from somebody when they're presenting. So I would definitely recommend doing a mock qual. And after that mock qual, try to get that written feedback back from the mock qual committees so you can actually improve based on all of the recommendations. Here are some tips for during the qual. And me and my fiance Ryan are going to sort of act out some examples or scenarios that sort of show these tips in action during a qualifying exam.
So you're talking about the protein, you study protein A, but I was wondering more about a different role, protein B. How will you be addressing the role of protein B in your studies?
Oh, well, I could look at protein B too. I think that protein A and protein B are in similar signaling pathways. So maybe protein B could be regulated in a similar way to protein A. So I could address protein B too.
Oh, great. Can you describe the signaling pathway that protein B is in and how it is regulated?
Oh, I don't know much about protein B. Remember, you are in control of the conversation. You can steer it in the direction you want it to go.
So, you were talking about the protein you study, protein A, but I was wondering more about a different protein, protein B. How will you be addressing the role of protein B in your studies?
Well, my studies will be focused on protein A, but future studies could work to address the role of protein B. Anyway, protein A is regulated in the following way.
Where is protein A most highly expressed?
I don't know. I'm sorry. Don't ever just say, I don't know, when you get a question that you don't know. Use your logical skills to determine an answer. Even if you end up getting the answer wrong, it shows your committee that you're at least trying to think through things. Don't give the answer and then say, I'm sorry. Don't ever apologize for not knowing something or being wrong about something. It's a way to punctuate every time you don't know something. Sometimes it's, when you don't know something, you can move on. Maybe your committee forgets, but if you say you're sorry every single time after you don't know something, you're punctuating it and they're going to start tallying it in their head. You're making it much more noticeable. So do not apologize for not knowing something.
Where is protein A most highly expressed?
I'm not sure, but I know that protein A has a significant effect in metabolism, so I would assume that it's expressed in the liver or muscle or adipose tissue.
Who discovered protein A?
John Doe discovered protein A.
No. Jane Doe discovered protein A.
Oh. Once you hear an answer, you can repeat it back to emphasize that you now understand it. This is a way to sort of end you not knowing something on a positive note, that you're repeating it and you're learning that thing that you didn't know.
Who discovered protein A?
John Doe discovered protein A.
No, Jane Doe discovered protein A.
Oh yes, Jane Doe discovered protein A.
What is the stimulus for the signaling cascade in protein A?
It's insulin.
No, it's cortisol.
The next tip is to take your time to answer. From when they ask a question to when you answer, that silence between you answering can feel really awkward, but you have to fight with all your might to not feel the silence. You can take a sip of water after you get asked a question. You can repeat the question back. This is also very helpful because you want to make sure you're answering what they actually asked. You don't want to waste your breath answering something they didn't even ask. So it's helpful to repeat the question back for clarification and to buy yourself some time of thinking about the answer. After I got asked something during my qual, I would just sit and think about it. It feels like a long time to you, but your committee members, they know you're thinking about it. It's okay to take a minute or even more to think about an answer instead of rushing into the answer just to fill the silence.
What is the stimulus for the signaling cascade that protein A is in?
You're asking me what is the stimulus for the signaling cascade that protein A is in?
Yes.
Stimulus for the signaling cascade that protein A is in is cortisol.
Correct. What receptor does cortisol bind to?
It binds to the glucocorticoid receptor, and then it's translocated into the nucleus, and then that causes transcription of mRNA, and then that mRNA is translated into a protein.
That is correct.
Make sure to limit your responses. Give one answer at a time. Obviously, you want to show your committee that you know a lot, and that's what the point of the exam is, to show them that you know a lot and that you're thinking about science in a way that makes sense. But you don't want to show off all of your answers at once. It's basically laying all of your cards on the table, and giving long answers will confuse people. They don't want you to go on and on and on, providing information they didn't ask for. It will end up probably annoying them. So make sure to give really short, succinct answers. During my qual, I would actually practice this method where I would breathe in after I answered a question. To get myself to stop talking. They couldn't tell I was doing it, and it really was helpful for me to just be quiet.
What receptor does cortisol bind to?
It binds to the glucocorticoid receptor.
What happens once it binds?
It is translocated to the nucleus.
What happens once it's in the nucleus?
It activates the transcription of several genes and is then translated into proteins to have a downstream effect. When the person first gives their answer, they basically had an opportunity and they answered one question. So then when the person decided to answer succinctly, they ended up answering 3 questions instead of just 1. So you're actually increasing the amount of answers you're giving instead of laying out all your cards on the table at once. So the last tips I have to give you are show excitement about your project. This will make your committee excited too. This is your thesis. You have worked so hard on this and continue to work so hard on this. So show some excitement about talking about it. This will be infectious and make your committee excited too. Think of the qual exam as an opportunity to have a conversation with really smart people about a project that you really care about instead of just like an exam. This can turn into a really interesting and stimulating conversation with experts in different fields. So try to rework how you think about this whole situation in your brain. And the very last tip I have to give you is if you fail your qualifying exam, don't give up. People fail all the time. People just don't talk about failing. But I swear to you, I know people who have failed. It really hurt. It hurt their mental health. But they regrouped and they did it again and they passed. So if you fail, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Learn from your mistakes and try again. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below. Let me know if there's any other tips you want to hear about grad school. I think I'm also going to do a video about how to effectively use Google Calendar as a grad student. But thanks again for tuning in, and please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Good luck on your exam.
Guys and Juliet. Hey, ask you a few questions. That's all right. Wah, wah.
A mistake!
I can do it. I'll be a star someday.